The entire restaurant went silent when the billionaire stood up. It was a Friday night at the Obsidian, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Everything inside looked perfect: crystal chandeliers, soft live piano, waiters in black suits, and tables filled with people who measured their worth by the brands on their wrists and the cars waiting outside. I was sitting with my colleagues from the marketing team. We had closed a major deal that afternoon, and our director had brought us here to celebrate. I remember checking my watch when the old man walked in. 8:17 p.m. He did not belong there. That was the first thought that crossed almost everyone's mind. His shirt was light blue, washed so many times that the color had faded. The collar was slightly frayed. His trousers were clean but old. His shoes were brown leather that had clearly walked many miles. In his right hand he carried a small, worn black bag that looked like it had been bought 20 years ago. The head waiter stopped him near the entrance. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I saw the waiter's polite but firm expression, the kind that says, "Sir, this place is not for you." The old man simply smiled, said something quietly, and pointed toward the dining area. After a short hesitation, the waiter led him to a small table in the far corner, the table usually reserved for people who were alone or who didn't spend much. That was when the mocking began. A group of 4 young men in expensive suits sat 2 tables away. One of them, a guy with a loud voice and a gold watch, leaned toward his friends and said just loud enough for several tables to hear, "Guys, look what the cat dragged in." The others laughed. A woman in a red dress at another table covered her mouth and whispered something to her friend, both of them smiling. Even one of the junior waiters smirked while pouring water. The old man heard it. I know he did because his shoulders stiffened for half a second, but he didn't turn around. He didn't say anything. He simply sat down, placed the old black bag on the chair next to him, and waited. When the waiter came, the old man ordered only a glass of still water and the cheapest soup on the menu. The loud young man from the other table couldn't resist. He raised his voice again. "Excuse me, sir, are you sure you can afford the soup? We can take a small collection if you need help." His friends burst out laughing. A few other people smiled. I felt a wave of second-hand embarrassment, but like everyone else, I stayed quiet. It was easier that way. The old man looked at the young man, gave a small polite nod, and said nothing. He received his soup and began eating slowly, carefully, as if he had all the time in the world. Every few minutes someone from the nearby tables would glance at him and exchange looks. The message was clear. He was the evening's entertainment. I kept looking at him between conversations with my colleagues. There was something strange about the way he sat straight back, calm eyes, no sign of anger or shame. Most people in his position would have left. He stayed. 23 minutes later, the main doors opened again. This time the atmosphere in the restaurant changed instantly. The piano player even missed a note. Conversations dropped. Several people turned their heads. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit walked in, followed by 2 large men in dark clothes who were clearly bodyguards. I recognized him immediately. Everyone did. Richard Hale, founder and CEO of Hale Industries, one of the top 5 richest men in the country, a man who almost never appeared in public without a reason. The restaurant manager practically ran toward him, smiling widely. "Mr. Hale, what a wonderful surprise. Your private table is ready as always." Richard Hale did not look at the manager. His eyes moved across the room slowly, and then stopped on the old man sitting alone in the corner with his bowl of soup. What happened next is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Richard Hale walked straight past the best tables, past the people who were hopping. He would notice them, past the young men who had been laughing earlier. He stopped exactly in front of the old man's small table. The entire restaurant watched in complete silence. Then the billionaire did something no one expected. He placed both hands behind his back, lowered his head slightly in a gesture of clear respect, and said in a voice that carried across the room, "Good evening, sir. I didn't know you would be dining here tonight." Silence that followed was absolute. The old man looked up. A gentle smile appeared on his face. He put his spoon down and replied, "Richard, you're still working too late, I see." Richard Hale pulled out the opposite chair and sat down without asking permission. One of the bodyguards immediately stepped forward, carefully picked up the old black bag, and held it with both hands as if it contained something extremely valuable. The restaurant manager stood frozen a few feet away, completely lost. He finally managed to ask, "Mr. Hale, is everything all right?" Richard Hale looked at him and answered calmly, but loud enough for most of the nearby tables to hear. "This gentleman is Mr. Arthur Langston. He was my mentor for 15 years. Everything I have built, every company, every investment, every success, started with the lessons he gave me when I had nothing." Name, Arthur Langston, hit the room like a physical force. I saw several people reach for their phones. Others just stared. Even I felt my stomach drop. Arthur Langston was a legend in the business world. He had founded one of the earliest major technology firms in the country, made a fortune, and then quietly disappeared from public life almost 2 decades ago. Most people assumed he was either dead or living somewhere abroad. No one expected to see him in a faded shirt, eating soup in the corner of a restaurant. Richard Hale continued, still looking at the manager but speaking to the entire room. He prefers a simple life. That is his choice. But the people who spent the last half hour mocking him should know something. The man you were laughing at once employed more people than most of you will meet in your lifetime. Some of your parents probably worked for companies he built. No one moved. The young man with the gold watch looked as if he wanted the floor to open and swallow him. The woman in the red dress stared down at her plate, her face red. Richard Hale then turned back to the old man and spoke more softly. They talked for nearly an hour. Sometimes the old man laughed quietly. Sometimes Richard listened with complete attention, the way a student listens to a teacher. The bodyguard stood at a respectful distance. The rest of the restaurant stayed unnaturally quiet. Even the piano had stopped. When they finally stood up to leave, Richard Hale helped the old man with his chair. The bodyguard still carried the faded black bag. As they walked toward the exit, every eye in the restaurant followed them. No one spoke. No one laughed. I sat at my table long after they were gone. My colleagues tried to restart the conversation, but I couldn't focus. I kept seeing the old man's calm face while people mocked him. And then the same man being treated with deep respect by one of the most powerful people in the country. That night, I learned something no business book had ever taught me. Clothes do not measure a person's value. Age does not measure a person's importance. And the loudest people in the room are very often the ones who understand the least. Sometimes the most powerful man present is the one sitting alone in the corner, eating soup, while everyone else is busy laughing. I never forgot Arthur Langston. And from that night onward, I never judged a person by what they wore again.